They told you the Bible was one book, one story, one truth. But what if that's a lie? Hidden high in the mountains of Ethiopia lies a sacred manuscript, a version of the Bible that is older, bigger, and radically different from the one most of the world reads today. A Bible that contains books you were never meant to see. Books that speak of angels mating with humans, a Messiah described in ways the West never taught, and prophecies that challenge the foundations of modern Christianity. This is the Ethiopian Bible, and for centuries it's been shrouded in silence, not because it's irrelevant, but because it's too powerful. To understand why this ancient scripture was kept from global knowledge, we must go back nearly 2,000 years, to the Kingdom of Aksum, a powerful African empire that rose in the shadow of Rome and outlasted it. Aksum wasn't a primitive backwater, as colonial history might suggest. By the 4th century CE, it was one of the four great powers of the ancient world, alongside Rome, Persia, and China. Its kings ruled over a vast stretch of land that included modern-day Ethiopia, Eritrea, parts of Sudan, and Yemen across the Red Sea. It minted its own gold coins, built towering obelisks, and maintained vast trade networks that reached as far as India and Byzantium, and some of them are nothing short of explosive. But what made Aksum truly unique was its early embrace of Christianity. Long before Christianity spread through northern Europe, the people of Aksum had already converted. Their offspring, the Nephilim, were giants, beings of immense power who corrupted mankind. Enoch, a great-grandfather of Noah, is taken up into the heavens where he witnesses celestial secrets, cosmic judgments, and visions of the future. It is a narrative that sounds more like science fiction than scripture, but it was once part of Jewish and early Christian traditions, too dangerous, but in Ethiopia it was preserved, copied, and cherished. Around 330 CE, King Enoch declared Christianity the official state religion, making Ethiopia one of the first Christian nations on earth, second only to Armenia. Why didn't we know? It rewrites Genesis with a different timeline, giving detailed chronologies, laws, and reinterpretations of creation, the flood, and the patriarchs. While it includes the familiar Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, it also contains the Synodos church orders attributed to the apostles and the Book of the Covenant, a compilation of ancient Christian teachings and rules. They found a thriving Christian kingdom with its own patriarchs, monastic orders, and ancient manuscripts. The Ethiopians had never heard of the Pope, never followed Latin rites. It led to resistance, rebellion, and ultimately expulsion. European historians would go on to dismiss the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church as a strange, isolated sect. Its scriptures, so rich, so ancient, were seen as curiosities, not canon. By 1636, the Ethiopian Emperor Fasilides had expelled all Jesuit missionaries, severing ties with the Catholic Church and preserving his nation's spiritual autonomy, and practiced rituals that seemed pagan to European eyes, like the use of drums and incense, holy dances, and fasting traditions that predated even the Vatican. These texts offer a glimpse into early Christian life, raw, unfiltered, and far less institutionalized than what developed in Europe. Missionaries translated the King James Version into local languages, replacing native traditions with Western interpretations. The Ethiopian Bible was deemed too obscure, too Jewish, or simply not relevant. It describes angels guiding Abraham, celestial calendars, and divine pacts. The idea of a multidimensional heaven, of angels shaping human destiny, of cosmic wars unseen by mortal eyes. These weren't random myths. They were integral to the spiritual worldview of ancient peoples, African, Jewish, and early Christian alike. What if your Sunday school taught you about Enoch's celestial journeys instead of just David and Goliath? They argue that they're not divinely inspired, or that they lack apostolic authorship. Handwritten in jayas on goatskin parchment, kissed with incense, wrapped in silk, they remain untouched by time. But such decisions weren't made by divine decree, they were made by human councils influenced by politics, empire, and theological agendas. Institutions like the British Library, Princeton Theological Seminary, and the Ethiopian Manuscript Microfilm Library are digitizing ancient texts that have never been seen outside of Africa. But much remains untranslated, much remains misunderstood. What if the giants of Genesis were not metaphor but memory? The Book of Enoch was only rediscovered by the West in the late 1700s when Scottish explorer James Bruce traveled to Ethiopia and brought back several manuscripts, a Christianity that breathes with African spirit, Jewish tradition, and mystical fire. Even then, scholars dismissed it, calling it folklore or Gnostic fantasy, or was it simply a matter of history being written by the victors? In the West, it was labeled heretical. In Ethiopia, it remained sacred. What are they hiding? And who decides what you get to read? Like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Tell us, what else has the world hidden from you? Among the ancient scrolls were fragments of the Book of Enoch and Jubilees, proving that these texts were once widespread among ancient Jewish communities. This wasn't through European missionaries. It was through an African man named Frumentius, a former slave who had been raised in the royal court and later became the first bishop of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. From that moment on, Christianity in Ethiopia developed independently of Rome or Constantinople. It's about who told the story. A literate, ancient Christian empire in Africa, preserving a version of the Bible older than the one in Europe, didn't fit the narrative. It grew in the native Jayas language, untouched by the Latin translations that would later dominate the Western Church. And it is in this independence that the story takes a dramatic turn, because while the Western Bible, the one most people know today, contains 66 books, the Ethiopian Bible has 81. That's 15 more books. Take, for instance, the Book of Enoch. This ancient text tells of a time when the sons of God descended to earth and took human women as wives. Yet today it's gone from most Bibles. Why? The Book of Enoch was banned by church councils in the 4th century, particularly at the Synod of Laodicea, when church leaders deemed it too mystical, too esoteric. Then there's the Book of Jubilees, also included in the Ethiopian canon. Even the New Testament in the Ethiopian Bible is different. So the question becomes, if Ethiopia preserved all this? Because history isn't just about what happened. For centuries, Africa was painted as the dark continent by colonial powers, not because it lacked light, but because the light it held threatened to outshine European dominance. When Jesuit missionaries arrived in Ethiopia in the 16th century, they were shocked to the Jesuits. This wasn't Christianity, it was heresy. They tried to correct the Ethiopian faith, dismissing the extra books, banning local practices, and imposing Latin doctrine. But the damage was already done. In the 19th and early 20th centuries, as colonial powers scrambled to carve up Africa, they brought with them their own Bibles, smaller, redacted, sanitized. But was it truly irrelevant? Or was it just inconvenient? Consider this. For over 1,000 years, the Ethiopian church had access to scriptures that the rest of the world lost. It wasn't until the Dead Sea Scrolls were unearthed in Qumran in 1947 that the truth became harder to ignore. The Ethiopian Bible hadn't added anything. It had preserved what others lost. This wasn't heresy. This was history. But the most haunting revelation of all might be this: the very ideas censored from Western canon are often the most spiritually provocative, and yet for generations, readers in Europe, the Americas, and parts of Asia were never given a chance to explore them. Ask yourself, how would your view of God, the universe, and humanity change if you'd grown up with the Ethiopian Bible? To this day, many churches across the world still reject these texts. Yet in Ethiopia, hidden in remote monasteries carved into stone cliffs, guarded by priests who have memorized entire books by heart, the forbidden scriptures endure, and perhaps untouched for a reason, because some truths are too vast to be confined to 66 books. As we speak, scholars are finally beginning to pay closer attention to Ethiopia's biblical canon, and much remains hidden. Why did the Western world turn away from these books? Was it fear? Control? We may never know the full answer, but we do know this: the Ethiopian Bible offers a glimpse into a forgotten Christianity, one unfiltered by empire, unedited by councils, unshaped by Rome, and if you dare to read it, it just might change everything you thought you knew. But that's only the beginning, because there are whispers of even older scrolls, texts said to predate Enoch himself, buried in the sands of Nubia, sealed beneath the ruins of Lalibela, or locked away in the Vatican's restricted archives. That, my friend, is a story for another time. If this journey opened your eyes to a piece of history you were never told, don't let it end here. Join us next time on History Off the Map, where we uncover the truths they don't teach in school and explore the stories that refuse to stay buried.